Hey everyone, David Twyble here. Today I want to continue our Regulations 101 series, this time talking about the CFR structure and citations. In this video we're going to briefly review Title 14, which we talked about last week. Then we're going to talk about the CFR structure, how they're laid out by the government, and then the CFR citations, which is how we actually find any particular regulation that we're curious about. And then we're going to do an example with A tomato flames and how to reference that. So Title 14, Aeronautics and Space. This is the title of the Code of Federal Regulations that most directly applies to what we do as pilots and aviators. And as we may remember, the CFRs has 50 titles, Title 14 being one of them. This is what replaced the Federal Air Regulations, or the FARs, or the FARs for short. And Title 14 contains pretty much anything that has to do with flying. Pilots, space, navigable airspace, airports, aircraft, you name it. If it flies, it's probably in Title 14. So let's look at the structure of these regulations. First of all, we have the title, which we've already defined that. Then we have the chapter, and most pilots or people who look at air regulations probably are actually not familiar with the chapters, and we'll see why here in a minute. Then we have the subchapter, and then we have the part, and these are the parts you're probably familiar with: Part 61, Part 91, Part 830, even Part 1. These are broad categories. Then we have the subpart, and then we have the section. And the section is actually the regulations that we reference when we talk about referencing a regulation. And they always begin with this little double S sign, or what's called the section sign. And these are a stylized double S, which comes from signum sectionis, from the Latin. And then we have the paragraph structure, which is how we dig into the text itself with the paragraph, the subparagraph, the item, and those go by the letter, the number, and then the Roman numerals. And then most importantly, but last, is the effective date, making sure that we're talking about the same regulation itself. So first up, when we cite a regulation, is the title, which we've already defined in our air context here as Title 14. Next up, we had the chapter in our earlier list, but we do not include this in the citation because the chapter is merely for reference as we try to find regulations. It's a finding tool, not a citing tool. The same goes for the subchapter. We don't use these in the citations themselves. And then we have the part, which we do reference. We do not reference the subpart. Once again, that's for finding the regulation, not citing it. And then we have the section. And the section is usually the whole name or the whole number of the regulation that we are citing. And then the paragraph structure. So we'll dig into the paragraph itself and pick down through that to the text that we're interested in. And then we have the effective date. And if you don't include the effective date, you can't be sure that you are referencing the same regulation as someone else who has all the other parts up to that point. So when we reference a regulation, we are implicitly including the title, the part, the section, the paragraph structure, and the effective date. All of those are technically included when we drill down to a regulation. Okay, so let's do an example here. We're going to reference A tomato flames, and we start off with Title 14, Aeronautics and Space. We have Chapter 1, Federal Aviation Administration, Department of Transportation. So that's the first chapter in Title 14, and believe it or not, it is the only chapter in Title 14. So there's another reason to leave it out, especially for those of us in the aviation world, because there's only one, so why would we reference it? Then we have subchapter F, which is air traffic and general operating rules. And remember, we're talking about how to find A tomato flames here. So A tomato flames has to do with how we operate an airplane, so subchapter F makes sense. And then we have Part 91. We're talking about operating rules. And then subpart C, which is equipment, instrument, and certificate requirements. And that makes a lot of sense if we're trying to talk about the equipment and instruments that we have to have in our airplane to fly day VFR. And then we actually get to the section, so we have our double S symbol there, 91-205. And then our paragraph structure, and we actually find atomato flames in paragraph B. And then the effective date, the effective date of this regulation was originally published in 1989, and the most up-to-date revision, which you probably can't see if my video is hiding it there, the last revision was in 2024. So if we're talking about Title 14, Part 91, Section 91-205, Paragraph B, 2024, then we can know that we're talking about the same atomato flames. So that's how we go about finding regulations and citing them. And in next week's video, we'll start digging into some of the parts themselves. So until next week, fly safe.